As the name suggests, today's topic deals with the most important aspect of the internal audit function, which is communicating findings so as to influence action. However well you have worked on the job, if you cannot present it well, your efforts are wasted, said my boss during my articleship days, and it has remained with me till today. Internal audit reports can be powerful instruments when they are well used and constructed. They can create impression of audit professionalism. They can tell their clients about important events they would otherwise not know about. They can change thinking. They can impel action. Dudley Brown said almost 60 years ago, he said, and I quote, "We have, on the whole, an admirable story to tell, buttressed by facts and figures, and supported by analysis and reason. And it surely is one that deserves to be told often in the right places with vigor." I unquote. So I believe that such a story will definitely sell because facts tell, stories sell. And to explain how effectively to do this and influence with our findings, we have with us none other than Ms. Bhavani Jois, an influencer, a coach, and an internal auditor at the core. Bhavani is a founder and executive coach of the Evolving Auditor and the Evolving Way.
Yes.
She is a fierce advocate for human potential and a passionate architect of the evolving auditor. She believes that by challenging our inner limits and cultivating clarity, we can unlock extraordinary growth, resilience, and leadership presence. With a distinguished 25-year career in governance, risk, and internal audit, including her tenure as head of internal audit at Infosys, Bhavani brings depth, insight, and bold thinking to her work. 3 years ago, she transitioned from corporate leadership to coaching and facilitation, drawing from her cross sector experience in the UK and India. Through the Evolving Auditor, she empowers audit, risk, and governance professionals to build influence and impact by elevating their human skills, professional courage, emotional intelligence, and strategic foresight, along with technical mastery. Her tools, workshops, and community experiences help auditors become trusted advisors and catalysts for change. Bhavani is a certified corporate director with the Institute of Directors and serves as their empaneled faculty on the enterprise risk management and internal audit. Through her venture, The Evolving Way, she coaches executives and leaderships to build mental fitness, navigate transitions with clarity, and embrace purpose driven growth. A PCC credentiated coach with the International Coaching Federation, Bhavani integrates powerful methodologies including conversational intelligence, neurolinguistic programming, and positive intelligence. Her vision is to create fearless, courageous organizations starting from the top where audit, risk, and governance professionals model resilience, self awareness, and the inner work required to lead with integrity and live fulfilled lives. I now hand over the charge of the session to Ms. Bhavani. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Gauri. Thank you, Chandrasekhar sir. It was, as I was, first of all, a lovely introduction, Gauri. Thank you. And when Chandrasekhar sir was talking about the profession, I was like, what an amazing profession to be in, right? The privilege that we have as internal auditors is an astounding, actually. And there's so much we can do given our ability to look at the organization across the section. So today's session is on storytelling. We all know that we have to do audit reporting, but often audit reporting on its own doesn't really do what is expected of us because, does it get the traction that it needs as a final product of our hard audit work is a real question. So when I think about it, right, what is the purpose of internal audit? It is not to find what's wrong. That is just the method. Finding what's wrong or the gaps in the controls is just the process of an internal audit. The objective is to strengthen governance. The objective is to move the organization into taking action. The objective is to help the organization meet its objectives to preserve and elevate stakeholder and shareholder value. If that is the objective, then reporting findings in a manner that just says, this is what I found, this is what you have to do, and it doesn't get the traction and there's a constant battle and a conflict trying to get the company or the organization to take action, then there's something not right. Because if they agree with their reason for having an audit and we do a great job at doing an audit and all of our hard field work, etc., is done well, what is happening at that final stage that's causing us not to get the traction that we need. If you think about it, right, internal audit work has two parts. The If you think of it an iceberg, the bottom part of the iceberg is all the hard work, the field work, the planning, everything is below the iceberg, because only your audit leader, your manager knows all that hard work. It is only that bit that is the top of the iceberg, which is actually the visible piece to the rest of the world. All of the stakeholders, the stat auditor, the regulator, the board members, the senior management, the audit committee, and that is your report. That's all that's visible, actually. So if all of your hard work can't culminate in that masterpiece at the top, then what is the point, right? And I want to draw parallels. Today, my session is about the art of storytelling, and I'm trying to draw parallels from actual storytelling to tell you how we've already got the framework and the ability to tell stories, but are we doing justice to it? Is kind of what I'm trying to emphasize today. Not reinvent the wheel, not say there's something new to do, but actually just to say that we do so much already. But are we, how can we utilize what we already have to really maximize impact? So let me start with what we're going to cover today. Why storytelling matters. I think that's important. I'm going to look at some story arcs. Okay, some story arcs which I'm going to use Swades and Chakde. I don't know, I picked these two. SRK always has great stories, and we're all glued to his stories. Rightly so. Just last week, he was recognized with his first national award, although it's way overdue, for his movie Jawan. So I thought it would be an appropriate storyline to take to just explain to you the importance of story. Then I'm going to share something that's called the auditor's narrative arc, which is quite frankly something you already know. I'm just going to give it, it's a bit like old wine in new bottle, but I want to emphasize its power in storytelling. Then I'm leaving you with a 12-step checklist on how to use the acronym storytelling to check your own reports, to assess its persuasiveness. We're going to talk a little bit about tone, time permitting. And I'm going to talk about visualization and why it's so important to bring visualization into your work. Then all of this wonderful work that you put into a report will not land as well as it should if your final presentation, whether that's in the, it depends on who you are, right? If you are the field manager or the field, the auditor doing the work in the field work, then your immediate stakeholder might be, somebody who runs a sub process within a major process. And when you have that conversation, that is your audience. Or if you are the manager, then maybe another manager in the business side is your audience. Or it could be the process owner overall. It could be the CFO. It could be the audit committee. How we deliver what we have to say is as important as what we write. And so today's session is not about that delivery of the final presentation, but I want to just touch on it. So it's one of my last slides, and then we'll do some quick takeaways and some reflection. So on that note, why storytelling, right? We all know data is exploding. So much information is available. And with all of the use of mobile phone and InShots and shorts and all of these versions of consumption, attention is shrinking. So 80-page, 50-page, 120-page audit report is not going to land. It's not. Right. When I do my coaching work and I do a lot of facilitation and training work with audit teams, the amount of time they spend on writing a report, and frankly speaking, if only they spent, it is spent beautifying a report. I would say I wouldn't even say writing; it's beautifying a report, only for it to get 5% of attention from the senior leadership because they don't have time. It is the reality of the life we're in. So data is exploding and attention is shrinking. So how do I capture your attention? When I say your attention, the relevant audience or the process owner, I want them to take action. I want them to listen and to be moved to take action. So that's the first reason. Second, leaders act on what they understand, not what they are told. I can tell you 100 things. I can give you lots of charts, Excel file, reports, lists, etc. That is information I'm telling you. But if I don't get it, if it doesn't connect with me viscerally, right, deep down as a leader, leadership is an emotional process. People come to work, they have lots of expectations from them. There are obligations. It's a human. At the end of the day, internal audit is a human-to-human business. And if it's a human-to-human business, the leaders will act when they really connect deep down with what you are trying to say. So how are you going to get that across? Facts inform, like Gauri had said earlier. Her facts inform, but stories are the ones that move people to take decisions. So is your report a collection of facts, or is your report a persuasive story that is moving the audience that you are giving it to, be it the process owner or the audit committee, to take decisions, to take action? That's the question. There is almost an automatic. Right now, you can go back and evaluate whether your reports are doing informing or moving people to take decisions. No decision, no action. If effectively, internal audit is not effective. That's my take. Now, storytelling is that art form that bridges findings to influence. And you know this, right? If you have children, if you tell your child information, this is important for you, etc., they will like switch off. Okay, so children are a great audience to practice storytelling. But when you make it important and you use your emphasis and you tell them and you give them the reason and the why and the power and the hook them to the story, they will take action. They will say, okay, I get it, I know why you want me to do this. Today's children are expecting reasons for everything, reasons for absolutely everything. Those days we used to listen. Same thing happens in business. The role of the auditor is forever important, but how we evolve with the attention span of the people we are servicing, how we deal with the overload of data and make it simple and understandable, that's the real crux of an evolving auditor, is in my take. So we move from reporter to sense maker and influencer. Okay, and I will talk about some of the challenges that are there on the ground. I acknowledge, we're trying to boil the ocean sometimes with our internal audits. We try to cover everything. There's only so much time. We have an 8-week audit. There's only this much budget. There are some, when we look at constraints theory, right? There are some things that are non-negotiable. There is only this much time. There is only this much budget. There's only this much resource, and the process owner's time is only this much. Which means, in all of these constraints, how are we going to do justice to the audit and the final product? That is a real question I think all audit leaders and managers, etc., need to be asking. Because what I've seen often is that we make this big commitment to the client or to the business. We will do this, that, and the other. And then when it comes to reality, data is not coming. We're not getting time. People are getting pushed. The time is not waiting for anybody. Time keeps moving. And so the pressure bounds on the process owner, on the auditor who's doing the field work. And so the field work gets stretched and stretched and stretched. And finally, we squeeze the report writing to the end. Now, that's not going to work. And I'll explain why. So I just want to give this crux of why storytelling is so important. It is a skill you have to master if you want to own the quality of your final product. So let's talk about what it is, right? Storytelling is not fiction. Okay, we are not making up stories. We can't wake up one morning and say, okay, today I'm going to add this masala in my report. Like if you're writing, a fiction writer can go to sleep, have a vision, come back in the morning and write it up. That's not what this is. We are making a story out of facts, which means if you ask anybody who has done non-fictional writing, they go into such depth in the material that they prepare so that the writing becomes easier. There's a lot of research that goes into non-fiction writing. That research parallel with internal audit is your fieldwork. So the more you gather in your fieldwork, the easier your report writing. So what is it then? It is called structured sense making. Okay, we are trying to make structured sense in a final deliverable to achieve clarity. Right, the process owner has only so much attention, or whoever, let's call them your stakeholders, have so much attention. You need to give them clarity. You need to show your credibility, that you understand the business, that you understand their challenges, that you understand their limitations, that you are pragmatic. All of that comes in your credibility in how you present your findings. And then you want to draw their commitment to take action on what you have come up with. That is the real governance dance, so to speak. Okay. Clarity, you have found something, you have seen something, you are the extra special eyes to find what they cannot see. You have found it. Can you show it to them with clarity? Can you show your credibility in the way you present? And can you get their commitment? This is the objective of storytelling, because otherwise it's just stating facts. I saw this, this is what happened, and let them decide whether they want to take action or not. That's not the intent. So let's talk about stories. Okay, we all, from the time we are born, from the time we are able to. Today, the kids are holding iPads and everything at the age of 2, watching some cartoon, and the cartoons have stories. Everything has a story. So we are ingrained with us is this idea of story, and whether it's Swades or Chak De or Chetan Bhagat or Arundhati Roy, the arc, there is always a plot, and it is that plot or that arc that keeps us watching and reading. So how do we get that same sense into our audit report? I want my audit reader to read like, what's next? Only then will they be moved to take action. Right now, the drivers may be different, right? But the intent with which they read has to be that. So let's talk about a story. A good story typically has, if you go and research story writing or storytelling, you will see plenty of different, how do I say, structures in which you can write. The guy was, he was rags to riches, riches to failure, rich to failure to rich to fail to rich, or all of that, right? Success. It's always some kind of wave. And that is what hooks the audience. So, but in a sense, every story has a hero. We all know this. And that hero is not, I'm not talking about gender hero. I'm talking about a hero, the main character. That character could be a person, it could be a family, it could be a city, a town, a village, a company, a team, anything. There's something central to the story. That hero has a goal. Typically, they want to achieve something. So they want to achieve, it could be a romance, it could be transformation for their village, it could be, launching a rocket into space. It doesn't matter. There is a goal. And this hero has lots of obstacles that get in the way. Something will happen, this will happen, that will happen, whatever. Various obstacles will get in the way. And in the story, they will figure out why it happened, how it happened. A lot of different chapters of the story will tell you, get to the root cause of what's happening, and then this hero will get some courage, this team or whatever will get some resolution, some courage, and they will go ahead and take some action to overcome these obstacles, address the root cause, and then they will and all along, and then they will get success. They will get, they will go to the top, or and I'm going to use only the success storyline because we want our audit to be success. I don't want to talk about the opposite. Although there are enough cases today floating around where the opposite story happens, in spite of the audit, the company flounders, there are problems. Let's not go down that route. Let's talk about the story of success. And all along this, underpinning this whole story is this hero's need, whether it's a village or a team or a female-based hero or a male-based hero, it doesn't matter. There is this deep why. Why do I want to win? Why do I want my village to get better? Why do I want to get that girl or that guy or whatever? There is a deep meaning. And we as a audience of that story are hooked at all levels. It's an emotional process from the beginning till the end. We are hooked. We like, we are eating mindlessly. We are watching so intently because of that. And this is the same for books. It's the same for even It's the same for documentaries. It's, if you take some of the National Geographic documentaries, there'll be some elephant, and that elephant has a whole story around it, or a tiger, or whatever it is, right? So stories are everywhere. Now, let's just talk about 2 examples. Since we talked about, as I mentioned, SRK, let's talk about Swades as an example. Everybody knows this. It's a classic. Hero comes back from abroad. He's an NRI scientist. He comes, his goal is to bring sustainable change to his village. There's obstacles, there's bureaucracy, resistance, lack of ownership. Then, the root cause of all of this is there's a mindset gap. There are old ways of thinking. Then his resolution is he empowers the whole village to take action themselves. He gets them hooked on. He builds local solutions. Why does he want to do this? It's for dignity of his village. He wants them to progress, resilience, etc. So this is the typical. And for 2.5 hours, we all sat glued and we watched Swades. Same formula. You take Chak De. The hero here is the women's hockey team and the coach, Kabir Khan. What was the goal? World-class performance, win the World Cup. For Kabir himself, it was redemption. It was earn respect, because of what happened for him. What were the obstacles? There was conflict, bias, lack of belief in self, etc. Why? Disunity, mindset, cultural and personal divides. What did he do? He made them have a shared identity. He brought discipline. He got them to engage in team rituals, so that which led them to victory. Why did they have to do this? There was pride, redemption, national purpose. So I think you got the crux of it. Now let's talk about the story arc or the story outline in audit. Audit findings follow the same human structure. The hero in the audit is the context, the process, and the process owner or the business unit combined. They are the main characteristic of your audit report, actually. And what is the goal? The goal is the criteria. Why does this process exist? What is the business objective or the benchmark or the standard that they have to meet in this process? That is the criteria and the goal, so to speak. What are the obstacles? This is in the 5 C's of audit reporting, this is the condition. What did I see? What evidence did I collect? What went wrong? What are all the gaps? Some mismaker checkers, no reconciliation, data is not matching, no audit trail, whatever it could be. Why did it happen? The root cause in the storyline is the same cause we have in the reporting. Why it happened? There's people, process, system, culture, various things. The resolution in the story is the corrective action in the audit report. What must be done? Practical recommendations that understand the root cause, the culture, the nuances, etc. We come up with practical recommendations and accountabilities for making sure this corrective action takes place. And why do we do all this? Because there are consequences that matter. There is risk, impact that the company and this function needs to take care of. They can't afford. Why? Because the business objective is so important to the success of the company. So I hope you see that, unless you have a different storyline, I think most audit reports I see have this structure. So it is actually already a story. But there are some important elements. Are we all very good at getting to the heart of every element of the story? Because if any of these elements of the story was missing in Swades or in Chak De, we would not have been as glued to it as we have been. So are your stories, it is already there. This, I'm sure you will all agree, is the classic structure of an audit finding. Are you as diligent as the story writer or the director of those movies in making sure every element of these elements are given the due attention and brought to life the way you need to bring it to life in your reporting? That's the real question. So very quickly, I think I don't need to spend time. You can see the parallels, right? The hero, the goal. I'm just mapping it to show you that Swades, Chak De, and your audit report are all the same. Okay, so this is just a very quick flash screen to show you that it is the same. So let's talk about this auditor's narrative arc. Okay, every strong finding can be told through 6 elements: the context, who and what is at the center; the criteria, what should be, or the goal, what should be happening, and why is it important or not? What is the aim? Okay, not why is it important, what is the aim? The condition, what is actually happening, the evidences we collected; the cause, why is it happening? Consequence, why does it matter? The impact; and corrective action, what must be done to address it. This is the universal story arc, which is now translated into audit language. I am sure you all can see this. This is exactly how your report template should look like. So now let's talk about when we write this, when we use this in our audit reporting, if we do it well, you actually already have a story. The thing I see is that we don't do each element well enough. We spend far too much time on number 3. We spend so much time on the fieldwork to find the condition. Do we really understand the criteria or the goal of this process? Do we really understand the context and this process owner and the context in which they operate? Do we really understand the causes? Do we spend enough time? Do we master the art of getting to the root cause? There are enough and more training programs out there to get to the heart of the root cause. It's an art form. It is persistence. It is questioning skills. It is listening skills. It is human skills. Root cause isn't going to fall on your lap because you did field work. Root cause is what you do after you found something. And when you get to the root cause, you are entering a very personal space of the process owner. And you need to master your human skills to get them to really reveal to you what is happening there. Then you have consequence, which is, do we actually understand the context in which this business operates? Do we know why this process is so important? And if it's not important, why are we auditing it? If we can't explain the importance, why are we auditing it? I think we should introspect ourselves as auditors. And then there's corrective action. What should they do? Not some generic management should improve, consider, no, not that. If this was your house and there is a leak in your house, what would you do to fix it? That is the kind of rigor an auditor. we've just established what a privileged role this is, right? So the corrective action should be that kind of corrective action. That means for which you need to spend time. You can't just give some generic recommendation, some generic root cause, and get the okay, report is out of the way. No, this is the real heart of what internal audit is all about. So let's just look at a few examples. I'm just conscious of the time. Okay, so we noted delays in customer refund processing. I'm just giving you an example of a plain finding and how your story can bring it to life, right? We noted delays in customer refund processing in over 80% of cases. This is what your fieldwork will tell you. Average turnaround time exceeded the company policy by 10 working days, with several cases above 20 days. Your fieldwork will tell you. And this is your recommendation. Management should ensure customer refunds are processed within 10 working days. Maybe you might go as far as saying, if we don't do customer refunds properly, customer dissatisfaction may be at stake. This might be the crux of what I have seen sometimes people stop at. And I'm not saying everybody's doing this. This is what I have seen in many cases. But if we pay attention to every single box with enough rigor, almost as much as we spend attention in the fieldwork condition, the context here is the refund process ensures customer trust and compliance with service standards. This is the context. This is why it's so important. This is the objective. This is what the hero wants to achieve. The criteria is that the policy, to meet this objective of customer trust and compliance with service standards, we have agreed that we have internally said that if you process your refunds within 10 days, customers' trust will be preserved. We more or less know this from our own experiences. And our fieldwork has discovered, and you can do your fieldwork, you do your analytics, you do your sample testing, you discover various things. This is what you saw. These are the obstacles to the hero. The refund process is the hero. To the hero achieving customer trust and compliance with service standards, the obstacles that they're getting in the way are these things. 80% of cases, it got delays, 14 to 20 days, etc. Why did it happen? Why was this refund process hero not able to prevent all these obstacles? Because there were lots of manual approvals, lack of staffing, etc. And an art form to get to the root cause. So many questions, so many deeper listening. Listen to body language. Are they telling you everything? What are they not telling you? That is where the magic is. And what is the consequence of this? Delayed refunds, customer dissatisfaction. Do you have actual consequence which has materialized, or is it potential consequence? Be clear on that, right? Because if you can't explain this, then you don't understand the process. And then you come to the corrective action, which takes into account the company structure, the company situation, the company's budget constraints, the company, all of that. And so when you, as an auditor, provide a corrective action, you are not asking them to go to the moon when they can't even go to Mumbai, right? So if you are in Bangalore, which is where I am, you are asking them to do what is within their ability, acknowledging that this is the context of the company. So this second version tells a complete story in line with the story arc of your famous Bollywood movies or famous storybooks. The point here is, this is for you to do your introspection here at this moment. Do you do justice to every single box? Because if you don't do justice to every single box, you can't write a full audit story. Okay, so this is for you to reflect on. I don't have the answer, but I will say this. If you look at the constraints of fieldwork, right? What are the constraints? You have a limited time. That's non-negotiable. Maybe you can negotiate. I've seen some great auditors say, look, I can't do justice to this in one quarter cycle, right? Because unfortunately, we are operating and reporting in these quarterly cycles. We have this pressure to finish. Auditors who know they can't do justice will say, I can't do this justice in one quarter. I will start this quarter and report next quarter. That is the only way I can do justice to this piece of work. No problem. If you convince your audit committee of that, there are many audit committees who I've seen said yes to that. So that is one part. So how can you play with time? Now, resources, right? If my budget is only X, let's say I've got 5 lakh per audit or 3 lakhs per audit, what can I deploy reasonably to get? Even if you give me 6 months, I only have this much budget. What will I do? My resource constraints come in this way. I can't afford to take a loss on this project. So how much can I deploy? Considering I can only deploy this much, how much can I actually cover? Nobody said that the audit must cover every single sub process every single time. And I see this mistake happening a lot. We try to do too much and we do everything at superficial level. We never get to the heart of every one of these 6 boxes. So I invite you to consider whether or not you have structured, and if you say that this is what the business wants, if that is what the business wants, the business does not understand the power of audit yet. And it is your duty to convince them, actually, if you do it this way and we kind of do a sweeping audit across all of the areas in your procurement process or revenue process, you are not getting the kind of depth that you really need to sustain governance of this company and really build the foundation to be strong, and therefore you can fly. If you have a strong foundation, you can build a 100-story building, correct? Your role, we keep operating at the foundation. That's what the auditors do. We keep strengthening the company's governance posture. So if you have to have a dialogue with the process owner, say, look, we can only, out of 8 or 10 sub processes, we can only do justice to 5, and these 5 are the most important. You keep having issues here. This is all we will do, and we will do it in detail, so that we can get to the heart of all of these 6 boxes. That is the justice we do as an auditor. To do anything else, in my view, is injustice. It is not doing service to the role that we have been given. And you might not agree with me, but if I believe that the internal auditor's role is to uphold governance, is to support the company in achieving its objectives, is to move the company to take action, then giving them a high-level report on everything which doesn't have depth, doesn't have enough root causing, doesn't tell them exactly what they need to do to fix it, isn't doing justice. So, go back, and my suggestion is go back and think, am I structuring my audit in such a way that I can do justice to each of these boxes? Because if in my field work, I can do justice to all of these boxes, writing a story when I come back to my office and to write a story, or from field work to my desk, is not difficult. I hope I have helped you see that perspective. So now we have another dilemma. Okay, so because the first dilemma is getting the heart of everything. Everything needs to be solid, absolutely spot on to write the story. But then I have different audiences. The process owner wants the whole detailed encyclopedia version of the story. They want everything, because that's what helps them get to the heart of what they need to do and fix, because they are in the driving seat of fixing this process. But then you have the senior management, and then you have the audit committee, who do not have the time or the attention, but are a key stakeholder in finding out, in getting the work that you have done. So how do you convert a good finding? Now, this is my caveat, a good finding. It's already, you've done the homework. This is a solid now. How do you convert a good finding to a board-ready message? It's the same story again. I've just done a few things. I've combined condition and criteria here so that my sentence doesn't look too bulky. But other than that, everything is here, right? So I'm giving one example, and this is not the only example. For the purpose of this webinar, I'm just sharing one perspective. The context is essential. So when I say the context is essential, the why of the process is important. You have to say, why is this process important? Why is this element really key? However, we found A, B, C, D, E, which did not meet A, B, C, D, E. So these are the conditions we found that did not meet these criteria, right? That's the second piece. Mainly due to what? Mainly due to number 3, all the reasons you have found in the root cause. As a result, these are all the things that has happened or we think can happen. Full stop. These things, the corrective actions we recommend, will resolve this issue. This is in one sentence, or maybe in one paragraph, or maybe 2 paragraphs. You can do a really good justice to this whole story, and the story has not lost its essence. So let me give you an example. So this is the refund process story. In your detailed report, in the detailed section of your report, you will have a template which has all of these boxes, and you will populate. And if after this, I will come to talk about observations which have multiple dimensions. Today, right, I'm only talking about one dimension, which is refund process. We've missed. We didn't issue them within the criteria of 10 days. Single observation, very easy to talk about. But then we have more complications in real life, right? So let's take this refund process and look at the board version of the story. The refund process underpins service standards. Any board member, any senior management can understand. In 80% of cases, refunds average 14 to 20 days versus the 10-day policy, mainly due to manual approvals and staff shortages. As a result, customer faces delays that can damage trust. Workflow automation and staffing support will restore compliance and protect reputation. Action dates, rating, your exact summary version is ready. It has shrunk the words. It hasn't lost the essence. Why? Because we stuck to the arc. And that's the key thing I want to ask. Because I have seen exact summaries which are copy paste of the detail, which means it's almost as long as this, and which means that the reader doesn't have the time to read. Or I have seen exact summary versions which only focus on the condition. This is what I saw. This is what happened. Is it going to move them to action? They're not going many. So there are different kinds of audiences, right? You have the audit committee chair who will read every single page of a 100-page report, and you will have the chair who will only have time for the first 5 pages. So you need to cater for multiple audiences. The point is, if you only give them a detailed version, you are not going to get their attention. If you give them only a version with the condition, they will say, okay, got it. Yeah, these things happen in our business. Because you haven't told the context and the consequence. So the first mind thing is say, yeah, these things happen in our industry, in our business. But I don't want to leave them at that. I want them to get to the heart of, no, it can't, we don't want to accept this because governance is at stake here. Your company's resilience to grow is at stake here. I want them to see that. So how do I do that? So this is where, and this is just another example. I want to leave you with the fact that you take any observation, you can convert it into a board version of the story. So I've not got the background to this story, but if you see this next observation, accurate revenue recognition is critical for financial integrity. Maybe you can say it's a redundant sentence. You can add it, you can leave it, you can voice it over. However, we noted 15% of cases where revenue is being recorded before delivery was confirmed, largely due to system configuration gaps and manual overrides. As a result, there's a higher risk of misstated results and regulatory scrutiny. Immediately addressing the configuration gaps and tightening review protocols will ensure accuracy and compliance. Now, again, you will know whether you need to give a detailed version. I leave it to you. I'm giving you both versions. You can decide which one is right for your audit committee, your senior management. But this is not enough. Because if I start reporting all of my observations like this, one line, I'm going to miss the bigger story, right? If you take the Chakde and the Swades example, if I went back and looked at each obstacle and reported one, and if the story director started to make the movie, let's solve issue 1 first, and let's solve issue 2 first, you don't get the complexity of the dynamics of all of the issues happening at the same time. I'm sure you agree, right? That was what the masala that got us in, oh my God, this is happening and that is happening. Oh my God, how is he going to deal with all that? That is how the compassion for the hero starts to grow because there's all these things to deal with. Same thing happens in business. Nothing is ever in isolation. Nothing is ever one time or one thing, right? So let's talk about another hero, the unbilled revenue story, right? Another story. When you do revenue recognition, you always have an unbilled revenue element to it. And I just picked this example. It is, if I take the audit universe of every company, you have endless numbers of these heroes that you need to deal with. So when there is more to tell, what do you do? A typical audit findings, let's say in an unbilled revenue story, you have 4 observations. You have delayed of effort confirmations resulting in revenue cutoff risk, right? I'm not going to expand it here. You have inefficient invoice processing, where everything was approved, but it didn't get billed, and there was some confusion on whether it is unbilled or not unbilled. Then you have system glitches. In this case, you had it was not bringing forward the right unbilled balances. So data integrity risk. Then you have access control weaknesses where even after freezing the unbilled revenue, the managers could go and make some changes. If I report each observation is valid, I can go back and create this whole storyline for each one. And I'll have 4 observations, 4 good observations. I will rate them, everything. But if I'm the process owner for revenue, or even if I'm the department, the manager for unbilled revenue, I'm the hero and my process is the hero. 4 isolated observations like this reported doesn't get me to see the complexity and the dynamics of what is happening. So I've seen many reports I've seen, each one is reported separately. This, all done, with enough rigor. But then the actual hero is not effort confirmation is in the process. Invoice processing is in the process. system, a flawless IT system is in the process. In this particular case, all of these are sub storylines to the bigger unbilled revenue process. So if I take one sub process and if I find 3-4 things happening that is affecting that sub process, perhaps one way of telling the story is telling the story at around the sub process of unbilled revenue, not 5 different things, right? So this is where your role as director and cinematographer come in. Like if you think of parallels, right? Or even the editor. If it's a book parallel, you are the editor. You are the writer, editor, you are the director and the cinematographer. All of you has to come and say, okay, how do I tell this story? Because I've done revenue, and in revenue, there are 8 processes, and there are problems in unbilled revenue. There are problems in billing maybe, and there are problems one more item. So there are three problems, and everything else seems to be okay. If I start reporting observations in this way, I am not going to get that inner visceral, emotional pull from my observation to say to the process owner, saying you have so much to concern you. There's so much you need to do. So we need to bring them all together. That's the point I want to make about building that bigger story. So what is this bigger story? So again, same arc of the context plus the 5 C's. In this case, the hero is the unbilled revenue process, ensures accurate and timely recognition of income, central to financial integrity and predictability. No problem. Revenue must be recorded completely accurately and in line with cutoff timelines. That's our goal. We have 4 obstacles. It's the same one from the earlier. I just put a bit more flavor to it. So we will say there are 4 issues. We will say our review of unbilled revenue noted 15 or 40 projects reviewed if African confirmations were delayed. In addition, we also found that invoice processing showed a delay of this, affecting our confidence on unbilled revenue. There is also a system glitch which is bringing forward erroneous unbilled revenue, which is causing a lack of confidence on whether the number starting point is accurate. Above all this, access control weaknesses allowed project managers to edit billing data, which affected the reliability of unbilled revenue. Something along these lines. We bring them together, right? And then we bring the root causes together because each one has a different root cause. So we bring the 4 isolated findings are stitched to a story of one systemic weakness, which requires potentially a whole overhaul. Because if I give 4 issues, somebody will say, okay, system glitch and access control, send it to the IT director. No, it's not the IT director's problem. It is the revenue director's problem. They are the owner of the process. They need to have the full picture. So when you do this, you actually get to bring the bigger picture, the bigger overhaul that needs to happen in this process. Then look at the consequence. Unbilled revenue misstatements can distort reported results, impact quarterly forecasts, and erode stakeholder and regulator confidence, etc. And then you have corrective action, which is, again, I'm not going to go too much into it. Now, this is the same template, right? It's just that so somebody was telling me, Bhavani, there's space constraints. I mean, that's the last of your problems. Don't overload the report with too much data and jargon, but surely you can take your observation over 2 pages. It doesn't need to all fit in 1 page, right? So have some criteria on font size. Don't squeeze the font into 8 or 10 font to squeeze everything into 1 page. Nobody said that is the law. There's no law that says audit reports have to show observations in 1 page. But yet I see so many people wasting time trying to squeeze it in, remove one root cause because it's okay. We have to fit it in the 1 page. What is the objective? I want to tell them everything. So I can definitely, in school, we all learned about English, pressy writing, right? How to write. It's harder to write less. I'm sure you all agree. It's easy to just do a verbal diarrhea of writing everything. The real art of writing is how to write less to give more. And that is, again, a practicable, learnable skill. Are you investing in it? That's for you to think about, right? The point is, don't let space become your constraint, but definitely look at stitching your narrative in such a way that you are fleshing out the bigger issue that the hero of the story, of your audit story, needs to know. So now moving from here, what do we do with this now bigger, complex observation at the board level? Because, I have to, if I stitch everything together, then I also have to stitch everything for the audit committee, correct? Or the senior management, so to speak. So I've given you a 3-sentence structure, which you can try to do for your stitched observation. Okay, so let's take an example. The first sentence is the context and the goal. Unbilled revenue is critical to ensuring accuracy and reliability of the financial reporting. Unbilled revenue is the context, the criticality is the goal. Okay. Condition and cause. Our review found delayed effort confirmation in 15 of 40 projects, invoicing processes lags, and again, I'm just giving example here. You will have to make sure that your comparatives are right. 15 out of 40. Don't just say 15 projects. You have to say invoicing processing lags. I think I missed one point here. What was the percentage? Okay, I didn't put percentage. So yeah, so a manager will say, invoice processing lags 7 to 12 days in how many cases, which is, I just audited myself here and found that. Recurring system glitches, for example, in how many cases. So, but you might, you will put it here. Now in the detailed summary, in the audit committee exact summary, you may choose, depending on the pulse of that audit committee, whether they want all of the nitty-gritties, or you can put little less and say refer to the details. But these are the crux of the problem. Our review found delayed effort confirmation, invoice processing lags, system glitches, and post-cutoff edits, issues caused by fragmented your root causes. The consequence and the corrective action. How do you combine these two? To address the risk of misstated results and loss of stakeholder confidence, we recommend blah, 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 blah. Or management has agreed to do the following. Now, this becomes your exact summary version of this complicated 2-page observation. I hope you see that, right? Again, re-emphasizing the crux of this is the fact that all 6 boxes got its due attention. Just like the stories that we read or the movies we watch, they don't compromise on the 6 boxes. All 6 boxes get enough creative effort by the writer. You as an auditor must give all 6 boxes the same degree of focus and attention. So I hope, if there are any questions, we can pick up any now, or we can pick them up later. Gauri, what do you say? I'm happy to continue. Okay, let me continue.
There are no questions right now. You can continue. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let's talk about the storytelling framework. So I try to bring all of this together as a 12-step guide. Okay, it really essentially covers everything I've already covered earlier. But you can consider this to be something you use as a checklist to see whether your audit reports are persuasive enough as a narrative. So the first thing is to set the stage. The S of storytelling is to set the stage. Why this review now? Link to business context. When you're writing a report, take a minute to explain why this review matters now. Why in this quarter? Why this review? What is happening in the business that makes this review really important right now? Then connect it to the strategy. What are the business objectives or risks, so to speak, that is depending on this process to be running effectively? Right? What are the business objectives? Because then you are hooking the reader into the bigger why, that why statement that we said, right? That every movie has or every storybook has. This is your why. The hooking them to the deeper connection, the emotional connection to the process. Then you talk about the criteria, right? Now, again, you either do if you're reporting single observations, you do it for the single one. If you're combining it, you do it for the combined observation. You outline the criteria. You reveal the reality. You talk about what you found. You yield the why. This is actually your 5 C's, right? So criteria, condition, cause, the consequence. You translate the consequence. So you have to make sure that your report has all of these adequately ticked with enough creative input into how you write it. Okay, that's a critical aspect. Then you elevate with evidence. So this is where you bring your data, your visuals, your examples, you make it vivid. You say in the case of XYZ, or you say these are the top 15 cases we found, or in the case of your top 3 customers. You give some kind of evidence. You make some, if you're doing a physical audit, for example, you went and inspected something, it's good to put some photographs, right? Because the photographs connect the reader to a deeper sense of the issue at heart. You can use a flow chart. So many things you can do and we'll come, there's a slide later, I will talk about why visuals are so important. And then this other extremely important element, which is lead with balance. How many of you, and you will be able to go back and introspect, actually lead with balance, which means no story. If you go back to all of the stories in the books, there's always there might be a villain, but there's a good side to the villain. There's a hero, there's a bad side to the hero. So you see everything, right? Likewise, you need to lead with balance, which means acknowledge what works. It is now become prerogative. If you want to be the trusted advisor that Mr. Chandrasekhar talked about, no one's going to trust you if you only talk about what's not working, right? So to be able to lead, to get strategic insight and to be able to get strategic pull and be invited to sit at the table, you need to be able to acknowledge what works and lead with balance. So some people do that as a voiceover. No problem, can be done, but unfortunately, sometimes when you look at the report in isolation, that voiceover that happens in the closing meeting or in the audit committee gets lost. An alternative would be to put a nice heat map or a dashboard where you can say, okay, if I'm doing revenue, there are 8 sub-processes. In my 8 sub-processes, these 3, only 3 of them, 1 of them is red, like real major problems, 2 are amber, some problems, 5 are green. 1 page, put some short notes at the side. It is so powerful in giving some balance to the report. Now, I have had clients tell me that these are people I coach and train who say the client doesn't want it. My clients don't, why waste time? The client doesn't want it. They're just saying, get to the observation. I would argue that a client who doesn't want to know about a balanced area of, a balanced view of their process could do with a bit more conversation to help them understand the importance, to help them to see the bigger picture, to help them. And this is back to the cultural nuance, right? A company that doesn't want to know what is going well will not be able to appreciate their process owners of what is going well. And so it's a cascade of only beating them up for what is wrong. So as an auditor who is not a champion of governance for the company, you want to encourage them to look at what is also good. You want to encourage them to say, you know what, I think you need to have a conversation with your process owners with both of this information at hand. That is the only way you're going to motivate them to take deeper ownership. Otherwise, it's just going to be a fear-based response. They're going to fix the process out of fear, not out of a genuine leadership of wanting to address this area. So I'm just giving you a perspective as to if somebody doesn't want a balanced view, then I think as an auditor, it's our duty to have a conversation to help them understand the importance of that. So coming to the next L, this is language. Okay, there's so much in language. But I will, there's tone, there's choice of words, there is whether you use active language or passive language. There's so many things with language. Today, I'm just going to talk about tone because, this is another whole chapter if you open up language in report writing. So I would say one of the biggest crux of the issues is tone matters, and I have some slides on tone. We'll come to that. Be as simple as possible with your choice of words. If somebody, if it's too complicated, your process owner may not understand it. There's no need to show off with bigger words. It's simple language. They say a good professional report should be able to be read and understood by a 12-year-old. So use that as a guide. Can a 12-year-old who's studied English read this report and understand it without me standing by their side to explain it? That should be a good guide. And of course, active language always is better. I do not know why people love writing in passive language. When you write in passive language, it means you don't take ownership for the subject of the person. So, the treasurer did not sign off the banking reconciliation is an active language. The banking reconciliation was not signed. By whom? Silent. Why? Because we don't want to mention this treasurer's name. But isn't that the process? So why can't we own the process and say we can give it more context due to lack of resources, due to time pressure. Let's understand their business, why they couldn't do it, and give them that benefit of doubt. But let's be clear in using active language where we have to name who did not do what. So that's the use of language. Then illustrate with insight. So this is the eye of storytelling, where, when you go to, you don't have to necessarily write so much of that in the report, although you can give some good examples in the table, top 15 cases, etc. But when you go to present it, if you bring analogies, like that process, we did this, or in this particular client, if the way your team handled client A, they should handle client B. These kind of analogies and cases help to simplify complex observations. So this is illustrate with insight is my next point. Probably the most important is navigate the next step. So this is your recommendations and or the corrective action. Has to be specific, time-bound, actions owned. One of the tests auditors have to do when they issue their report is to look at their recommendation and ask themselves, if I give this to any auditor, are they going to be able to look at this recommendation and know exactly how to test for this follow-up? I've seen recommendations written and I'm like, how are you going to audit this in the follow-up? It's so badly worded because it's unclear what the actual expectation is of the management. So another important test for the quality of your recommendation is ask yourself, I did the audit, so I should not be the one answering this. It should be somebody else. Would somebody else reading this know exactly how to test for follow-up? That's the clarity in which you need to write recommendations. It has to connect back to the root cause. So if your root cause is not strong, your yield the why, if it's not strong, what are you recommending? And another key element in your audits is, root causes in internal audit is not just why it happened, right? It is also why was it missed. We all know that it is the business's duty to both take proper actions to mitigate risk and to take proper actions to monitor that their risk mitigation is working. That is the business object. That is the business duty. It's their dharma, so to speak. If you're running a business, you have to take action to monitor, to remediate or mitigate risk, and you have to take action to monitor. Many a times we only focus on the fact that the mitigation is not good enough. They have taken some control, maker checker did not work, reconciliation not done, review not adequate. Why was it missed? So there should be no observation in your report which has only one root cause. Every observation should have minimum 2 root cause. Why? Why did it happen and why was it missed? And if you have that, the amount of richness you bring to your report, because now in your navigate the next step, you will be very clear to introduce a recommendation around mitigation if they don't have one. And if you introduce mitigation, you increase the chances of that this will not happen again. Because otherwise, you will tell them to improve the risk mitigation without monitoring. After some time, natural course of events, it's a law of natural, I don't know what's the word, regression, that it will eventually not work over time. But monitoring makes sure that the control keeps healthy. It's going to be continued to be healthy. So that's the other element. Are we bringing enough around the root cause to be able to really write a good recommendation? And the final piece is in G is guide to governance. We need to help. You see, process owners, everybody, okay, every company out there, whether it's large, small, startup, have come up with a business with an objective in mind, and that objective could be to address a problem they see. It could be a social cause, and and if it's a profit-oriented business, it's definitely to make money. It is to grow. It is at some point to exit. Various objectives, and all of those objectives can only sustain bad news, bad days, failures. It can sustain all of these things if there is good governance, if there are good ethical principles. And your role as internal audit is to help them establish a strong governance baseline right for their business. I'm not saying bring the gold standard of a listed company to a startup. No. It is our duty to help them establish a governance baseline. They are not governance experts. They are business experts. They are tech guys. They are whatever it is that they are doing. They are salespeople. They are production people. They are not governance experts. We are governance experts. So the G part of this whole storytelling is to help bring that bigger, how these actions are actually going to strengthen your resilience and ethics. So tomorrow when something bad happens, and there are things that are going to happen which you can't predict, you are going to ride that wave and still stay strong. That is the power of your storytelling. So I hope this framework gave you some insights into how to approach storytelling. I have a few more pieces I wanted to share. The next piece is the tone. Now, like I said, there are 12 pieces we can explore. I've covered some of these when we looked at the story arc and the five C's and the context, etc. And we're talking about tone now. So good tone invites collaboration. Why? Because tone is a very emotional thing, right? The choice of words we put. Like, for example, I'm sure you all know this. When you are arguing with somebody in person and you say something that is, or they say something that is not pleasant, you are able to directly ask them, why do you say that? What do you mean? You might get angry, you might get triggered, and you might shout or you might raise a voice, but you're able to do it in real time and you can get some kind of resolution, or that conversation or argument escalates. If you write in a manner that is accusatory, like, or it feels accusatory, you may not even realize it because you have written it from genuine intent, but it landed accusatory. Without you being present to help manage that situation, on the other side, that person is already boiling up, getting upset. How could they write like this? What do they mean? Etc. etc. So why even go down that piece? Why not start off with the idea that that process owner is really trying their best, right? Really trying their best to run this process well. Of course, I'm not going to bring in the fraud angle. There are a small portion, 5% or less, of people who are bad apples who will intentionally do the wrong thing. We can't audit with them only in mind. There are reasons why we do fraud audits, etc., differently. Not everybody is a bad guy. So we don't have to approach an audit report from an accusatory tone, because the damage, it's not, the reason I'm saying that, the damage is going to happen in a manner that you can't see. It's happening behind you because they're reading the report and they're getting upset by it. So that is the first thing. Aim for clear, respectful, and direct. So choose words that are not overloaded. Words like extensive, extremely. Why do we need to use extensive, extremely? What is that? How does that add any value? If it's 8 out of 10 cases, and I looked at, and 10 is the full population, it is obvious that it is extensive, that the problem is extensive. If 80% of my entire population has a problem, it is obvious it is extensive. Do I need to add masala by saying extensive gap or significant gap? Because that word is going to be, if you ask two people what significant means, both will give you different answers. So clearly your stakeholder and you will have different interpretation of what that is. Or while we have rating, and that's why we have rating. Rating will do that job. Your writing doesn't have to do that, is my point, right? And then, so the tone you have also shows how much you understand the business. So it's your credibility currency. Your reporting tone shows that I really get the challenges of these people. I know what they're going through. I get it, right? That comes through the tone that you write. So that's one piece. Yeah. So one is to avoid loaded words like extremely, very, extensive, all of these things. The other one is to use words that like ineffective or defective. Ineffective is still okay because there's a measurable way, but things like failed. I think I'm not remembering all the words, but you know what I mean by accusatory words. The other thing is when you write verbs. What are verbs? For example, management must ensure, or the process, the team leader ensures that the team members sign off the checklist before they submit the transaction. This is the tone of our report, or it's factual, right? Or we say the team leader failed to ensure or did not ensure. The issue I have is with the word ensure. What does the word ensure mean? When I write a report, the report is, I should not come back to the writer and say, what did you mean by ensure? How do they do it? So when we choose a verb, we always have to ensure, we have to write with by. So ensures that the team does ABC by doing what? By reviewing a sample of transactions, by doing this. So the any verb like manages is ambiguous, ensures is ambiguous, facilitates is ambiguous. These are all words that on its own does not mean much. Write is a clear word. Write. I don't have to say writes by writing. Writes is an obvious word. But sends is not. Sends by email, send by pigeon. I don't know. What does send mean? So when you write verbs that are not so clear, it really doesn't help the reader. So when you look at go back and look at your report and look at the verbs you use in describing your findings. And are there verbs that are unclear, which if you don't add the sentence by doing what, it doesn't stand on its own. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm saying if you use an ambiguous verb, please have a by extension to your sentence. Otherwise, choose verbs that on their own make sense. And then the final piece is, since we are here as auditors to help improve governance and help the writer and the company, the organization meet its objectives, then our report tone should go from extractive, in which we just say what the company has not done right, to collaborative, in how we can work with the organization or the process owner to improve the process. Right? So it's from extractive means getting things out of them, to collaborative, where it's a two-way kind of report writing. That's tone. Now, I think we have a bit of time, so I'm going to do a little experiment with all of you. Not experiment, a little exercise, I would say. I do not know how many people are there on the call, but if you could engage with me by scanning this QR code, and we will go to just to Mentimeter. Just your phone is all you need. Scan this QR code. I'm going to flip over to Mentimeter, where we'll just do a very quick 5-minute exercise on tone of report, and then we'll come back. I hope that's okay. So because I can't see you guys, and I don't know how many of you are listening, and how you're engaging. So this is a way for me to also know that you are there and you are engaging. So please scan this, and we'll go to Mentimeter. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and going to Mentimeter, and we'll come back here after 5 minutes. I hope that's okay. I'm just going to share my Mentimeter screen. Are you able to see this other screen now? Gauri, maybe you can just guide me. Are you able to see the Mentimeter screen?
Yes, I can see that.
Okay, perfect. I'm just going to press present. So the idea of this exercise, and you can, if those of you who didn't get the QR code, the QR code is here, so you can still scan. And so it's menti.com. It's menti.com. The QR code is here. And all I want you to do is, I've got 5 statements here of good, bad, maybes, tone of how we typically write our findings, right? So good, bad. I would like you to please scan and answer the questions as they pop up on your screen. And it's a slider. Do you think it is good, bad, or somewhere in between? If you can just engage with me by putting your perspective on each of these audit observation tones. We have 10 people who have signed in. I would welcome all of you to engage. The QR code is here. So are you able to, those of you who have scanned, I just need some guide. I don't know if anybody else has tried, whether you are able to respond. It's allowing you to respond? Yeah, okay, wonderful. So I've got one bad. Move it out of the way. Okay. I have 11 participants who have scanned. I welcome all of you to try and participate. And we have 5 responses and 7 responses, okay? Okay, 9 responses. Okay, I am, in the interest of put a minute on the clock so that I'm going to put 1 minute on the clock and then we'll go back and do a debrief. So if you want to get your responses in, please get them in the next 1 minute. Okay, I think time's up and thank you all for participating. So, interesting. The first two, I think everyone's more or less in sync. The last one, it word failed. Likewise with management or process owner, they don't like the word failed. So be very conscious. Failed is an example of a loaded word. Why loaded? Because it is subject to interpretation. It is not neutral. Okay, so the alternative to this would be to say our review found that controls over vendor payments were not designed and implemented effectively. Were not, resulting in errors. So this is a neutral way. Did not, were not. Nobody can argue that it was not designed and implemented effectively because you have enough proof, you have evidence. Okay. Now, the second one is during the review period, transactions were never approved on time, creating delays in payment processing. Most of you said it was bad tone, and I'm sure you said it was bad tone because of the word never, right? Even though in this particular case, let's say 100% of transactions in the review period were not approved on time. So that's factually true. But the word never is too absolute, even though it's for the review period. So therefore, an alternative would be in our sample of 15 transactions or during the review period, all transactions reviewed, none were approved within the expected time frame, leading to payment delays. So this is another way when you look at absolutes. Let's not write any absolute statements. Always give the review period. You can say none were, did not. These are factual. Never is a bit too absolute. It's like saying, all men are this, all women are that, all auditors are like this. These are generalized absolute statements, which are not helpful. Another example we looked at was, this is my favorite. Vague recommendation. Management should consider taking action to strengthen user access controls. Why would we ever write that? Right? Because the only time you would write should consider taking is when you are absolutely clueless on the root cause. Or you are not, because what does that mean? If there is a problem with user access control, shouldn't management definitely take action? Why consider? Or if it's not important, then why even recommend? Why is it even an observation? If it's an observation, isn't that a must? Or it's a must. And okay, even if you want to use the word should, why should consider? Should strengthen, management should strengthen user access controls. The word consider is a problem. I would love for all of you to go back and look whether you write the word consider and what drives us to write the word consider. Are we unclear of the actual recommendation? Are we unclear of the root cause and therefore can't give a proper recommendation? And if that is the case, then management must undertake a detailed root cause analysis as to what led to weak user access controls. That's what you should be writing, not consider taking action to strengthen user access controls. So I would, I think as auditors, should and must, we can see. Should means we strongly encourage you to do it. Must means you definitely must do it. Consider should be banned from audit recommendations, in my view. So we recommend that management implement periodic reviews to strengthen controls. Okay, so the word we recommend is a should or a must, but it's not consider. Because the thing here is, if you go back to pure English, the word consider is the verb. Management says, I've considered and I don't want to do it. No, I don't want you to consider. I want you to take action. So therefore, look for vague recommendations. These are all part of tone, the category of tone. Okay. Are there some questions? No. Okay. I think
yes, Bhavani, there's one question.
Okay.
Mr. Mehul Sutar is asking how to put management action plan in this. If Mehul ji is here listening to this, I think if you can explain a little bit of context of the question, then that will be easy for Bhavani to answer. The question is how to put management action plan in this.
I'm wondering, is it, either if he can be brought forward, because he will not be able to speak unless he's brought to the front from the participant side. I don't know whether anybody tech support can do that. Otherwise, I can infer that management response into the whole report, right? In the report. So, management response is a separate section in the report, whether your story, your role is the report writing. Right, and you have a section for management response, and you bring it in. I have seen where when it comes to the audit committee deck, they merge the recommendation and the management response, and they say management has agreed to do this, and it is pre-aligned that all the recommendations are what management have agreed to do, and or management agreed to do the following. The following recommendations were considered and decided to be not appropriate or whatever. But the auditor has to say, I recommended this and they're not going to do it. That's one way of not wasting space, so to speak, with recommendation and then management response in the AC DAC version. But in the detailed report, you will have your recommendation section and your management response. So the thing is, I'm not a big fan of having only agreed action section in the detailed report. I think we should have recommendation and then we should have management response, or you can have recommendation and agreed action, which is effectively the management response. But to only have agreed action feels it hasn't done just the auditor's skin in what they're recommending. You have to have skin in the game in what you're recommending. I think we need to have explicitly call out our recommendations, and we need to be sure that those recommendations are solid based on the root cause we have found. So that's my take, and definitely have a separate section for management response in your detailed report, and see how you want to tailor it in using the phrases of agreed action or management has agreed to take the following actions in your AC deck, so you don't have to repeat the recommendation and management response, because often they are the same management will agree to do what you suggest. I hope that answered Mr. Mehul's question. I don't have any other context, so I'm assuming that's what was asked.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, okay. So I'm. How much? Do you have a 10 minutes more, Gauri, so to speak?
I'm 15 minutes. 15 minutes more till 6:50.
I think I only need 10, so let's see.
Yeah.
So the next piece is visualization. So why visualization, right? I've seen reports which are written in Word document, which is fair, nothing wrong in doing it in Word, but if it's just text, it is not engaging the full brain. Okay, so those of you, most of us have been curious about our brain, have gone and done some research. You will know that you have the auditory part, you have the visual part. Your visual brain is so big, so much power. And if you don't utilize that visual brain of your stakeholder, then you're missing a huge opportunity, right? So pure text, I would say, is not ideal. And let's go back to our story, right? If you are reading a book, whether you're reading a fiction book or a non-fiction book, but a book written and published, there's a lot of description, lot of imagery through words. They've described it was a Saturday morning, the sun was high, all that. So you're literally sat in that space as you are experiencing that story you are reading. If you watch a movie, there's music on top of everything else. There's music and there's cinematography pulls you into the movie. How do you do that in audit? How do you draw the audience, your reader, into your report? So visuals in your report is the cinematography of your report, so to speak. So what does that mean, right? It is, and you will not see any writer. So I would say that in this context, you, the auditor, are the director and the cinematographer. You are also the writer and the editor. If it's the book context of a book, you are that creative person. Bring this piece. So it cannot be an afterthought. Visualization in your reports should not be an afterthought. You have to put a lot of effort into thinking about it. You cannot charts that you want to use, etc. Which kind of chart to use for what purpose? How to prepare it? Spend time. Does it give the full story? Does it say what I want to say? And I've worked with some Big Fours, and I've seen that when it comes to visualization, it is the senior most people that spend time because they know this is like the masterpiece, right? The visualization is the masterpiece. And giving the message through words is easier, but giving the message through pictures is much harder. So they spend a lot of time. It's like a painter, right? So one of the things that I wanted to emphasize is when we do report writing and we want to bring the full story into the picture, there's a very good book that was published in July this year. And those of you who are keen auditors and want to, this is your career, you've decided you're going to be an internal auditor, then please go pick up this book. It's on Amazon. It's written by a gentleman from Germany and a gentleman from South Africa, very seasoned audit leaders. The book is called The Gardener of Governance, A Call for the Future of Internal Audit. Okay, and it is a thorough. How do I say? It's like a textbook for the future of audit. And there the writer talks about the fact that you have to look at your report like a piece of art. And in art, and a piece of art is a combination of science and art, right? When a painter knows color combination, he knows all that. When a painter is doing a piece of art, he knows all that. But at the end of the day, it's a creative experience. So when a painter doesn't sit one day and say, okay, I'm going to paint everything in one go. A really solid painter will start. He will put some color. He'll take a break. He'll walk. He'll come back. He will say, okay, change the shade. He'll take a step back. He'll look at his big picture. He'll come closer. He'll paint. That is your report. So start early. Start thinking about your report from the beginning. I am not saying you have to start, if you want to put the PPT and start filling in, that's also fine, but that could be excessive. But if your Excel file represents each of the elements of your report, which is the 5 C's, you should be paying attention to all of those 5 C's and the context from the very beginning. Everything that you need to capture that would eventually go in your report should be part of your artwork from this masterpiece from the very beginning. Then the second piece is your visuals. You need to spend time thinking which visual will really convey the message here. What am I trying to say? So I've given some examples of some visuals here. I've not obviously given you the example exactly of it. You can Google it, I'm sure. I'm sure you've already used it. But these are some of the typical visuals we have in reports, right? A traffic lights or heat map. I've mentioned that earlier. It's for status and exposure. It's a great way to give balance to the report. It says this is good, bad, etc. Right? So you use traffic lights and heat maps selectively to give status and exposure and for balance. You can use timelines, to show delays, aging, milestones, etc. It's a nice way of showing like a Gantt chart of sorts where you are. You can use flow charts to put flow charts with a nice big star, a red star for all the bottlenecks, handoffs, problem areas. It's a nice way of showing something. Use small tables selectively. Please do not put a whole data dump. I've seen people put 14, 50, 40 lines, 30 lines. Do you think the reader is going to read? If it's for the process owner, please give it to them in Excel. If it's for the audit committee, they are not going to read. How to use your language to really give the crux of this exception, high value item in words, and a small table to give it some emphasis. Use photographs. And I'm sure, if the collective wisdom of the audience here, etc., you will probably get a lot more. But the reason I brought this in is to emphasize that visualization is not an afterthought you see to put because you don't want to break the monotone of your report. It is cinematography. It is genuine value add to your report. So you will need to give it the due attention. And my final piece, okay, and I mentioned in the beginning that all of this so far is about the written report, that PPT or that Word document, etc. But finally, it is you, the storyteller, that is going to go and convey the story in the setting of your closing meeting, in the pre-audit committee meeting, in the audit committee meeting, etc., etc. So you need to be extremely centered and present as the storyteller. So these are some micro resets I think we should master and this is just the tip of a series of micro resets you should be doing. We should definitely invest in our own self-awareness. That's the new with the dynamics of data that's happening and the amount of change that's happening in the industry, in our profession. We need to be acutely, one of the macro skills or the superpowers is your self-awareness. To know moment to moment, how am I being right now? As an auditor, I think that is priceless. So in the context of storytelling, awareness, when you enter the room, whichever the room might be, whether it's, whichever level of reporting, what's the energy? Read the room, look at the faces. Was there some bad meeting earlier? Are people who normally have their shoulders open a bit slouchy today? What's going on? Read the room. Don't come in, okay, finally got my 1 hour. Let me, get on with my report closing. And I know, of course, it's important. And I know it's precious to get this process owner's time, but it's useless if they're not in the frame of mind to receive your story. So sense the energy, ask a check-in question. Are we all on the same page? Can we go ahead with this? If you are not able to read, ask a conscious question to see that everybody is on the same page with you. While I know it's the agenda, I know you blocked the time, doesn't matter. Something could have happened just before your slot. So read the room. Read yourself. Where's your head? Did you come rushing in from traffic? If you are in Bangalore, getting from one end to the other is like a nightmare nowadays. So read yourself. Is your head here in the room with the stakeholder, or is your head in that client you're meeting next, or the report that, the meeting you just had when you got blasted? I don't know, right? You have to put all that away and almost do like a cleansing of your mind and enter this room because you want to be the storyteller. Storyteller has to be fully present in that room. Then pause, right? Humans, we hate silence. I don't know about you, but I don't like silence. And my coach always told me, Bhavani, you have to have more silence. And I'm sure if I listen to the recording of the session, there was probably so much I was just speaking too fast. That's one of my own areas of development. But I'm also consciously aware that when I need to, I can take a deep breath. 30 seconds can feel like a long time, but it's not, believe me. And just for your reference, 3 breaths is 10 seconds. So 30 seconds is like 9 breaths. But if that's what you need, that's what you need. When you're going to enter a big topic, a difficult message, you want to land the message well. You want to breathing feeds oxygen to your brain. Breathing slows your heart rate, and your heart rate and your speech rate is connected. So when you breathe and you present, you are actually doing all of this reset for you. And for those of you who are interested, you go and Google or YouTube, Steve Jobs. Somebody asked him a question in a big forum, and he took 18 seconds to think before he responded. I mean, we think, it's even the big people are caught off guard. So they take 30 seconds, they take 18 seconds. So you should watch. It felt weird to see. He was just silent for 18 seconds, but that's what he needed. So if you need it, you take it, right? No one's going to tell you otherwise. The third thing is courage, right? We auditors, and again, you need to do a self-introspection. Are we speaking what we have to say with courage, or are we worried about the consequence? Because we have taken this noble profession. We have, it's almost like the doctor, right? The doctor has made the Socrates oath, and they say, we have to save anybody, whether good or bad, etc. And so they do what they do. As an auditor, you are that voice of courage. You have to speak uncomfortable truth. So are you overly massaging your truth? Are you trying to make it land nicely? What would it take for you to become courageous? Knowing that it's your duty. Knowing that you can still say it respectfully. Knowing that maybe the consequence isn't what the company wants to hear, and maybe if it's a company that's going to cause you harm, psychologically threaten your role, is it the company you want to be with at all? Because your duty is to be courageous. So what preparation do you do to allow your courageous voice to come out? Because even if it's an uncomfortable truth, when you say it with confidence and courage, it lands the way it needs to land. So I would invite you to go back and think about courage as a quality of an auditor, and what does it take? I have another session I delivered a few months ago on what it takes to cultivate professional courage. There's inner work, outer work that you have to do to get professional courage, so that you can speak the uncomfortable truth with clarity and confidence. And then the final piece, and again, micro resets, there's so many. I'm just giving 4 examples here to match, right? So you have to match, and they say mirror and match the tone and the arc. So you have the full storyteller of the process owner's full version of the arc. You've got the board members arc. So let's say you're giving the board members arc presentation, and the board member starts to push back on something. Okay, the audit committee says, I don't agree. And you are feeling threatened because they're not agreeing with you. And this happens every day. I don't know any audit committee where the audit leader or the auditor doesn't get some pushback. Moving from the board arc to the process owner arc of the detail, suddenly starting to say more and more detail and taking up 10 minutes of their time to explain the finding isn't going to help you at all. That is not the place. So be very mindful of who, what tone, what emphasis, and if there is a disagreement, it's okay to disagree and take it offline, but not to move arcs and suddenly start, talking to them as if they're a process owner to try and explain and win the point in the moment. So that's where this matching has to really matter, right? Don't back off like and surrender, but at the same time, agree to come back and have a conversation with the evidence that they need, but agree that this is not the place for it. I think that's a much more powerful thing. Because if you go back and look at all the dissent, all the corporate failures that have happened, and where today increasingly the auditor is being pointed out, I would challenge that. And we're not there, right? Easy to read and talk about it and introspect on it and make it a case study. But to what extent was courage present? And to what extent was dissent present? Agree to disagree, and to what extent did the auditor match the audience that they were dealing with? Because let's assume for a moment the good work was done. They had done all the good work, but it is this final moment of truth. Did they bring their full self? That is the question I have. So I would say presence. All of these will help you with presence and clarity, which will lead to influence, one idea at a time. You are not going to wake up tomorrow morning and because of this 1.5 hour webinar become a master storyteller. The idea of today's session is to say to you that there is so much within your power to learn, practice, and inculcate as better storytellers as auditors. And I hope that today I've emphasized enough that most of what we already do is already in this direction, but are we doing justice to what is expected of our role in all of the dimensions of that observation formation, so that we can tell the story the way we need to tell the story? Above all that, are we working on ourselves as the storyteller also? That is bringing me to my end of my session. Okay, I think I did. So finally, key takeaways. Every audit has a story spine, so please use it. We've talked about that, the C plus 5 C's, etc. Storytelling turns findings into influence. I hope I was able to emphasize that to you. The narrative arc and the stitch stories build credibility. Storytelling as a checklist can help you turn findings into influence. Your tone and your visuals, among many other things, are very important because they drive trust and clarity, which helps the readers see and act. And finally, micro resets keep you present in the tough rooms. Okay, so these are my key takeaways from today. My encouragement for you as next steps: pick one finding this month. Well, today's the last of the month, so next month, pick one finding from tomorrow onwards. Try and apply this narrative arc. Go back and do a self-audit to see whether I'm doing justice to all 6 dimensions of this arc. Use the storytelling checklist to do a self-audit. Upgrade one visual. Go back and truly introspect. Why am I putting this visual here? What is its value? Is it just an Excel file, an Excel table? I quickly created one graph and I put it for some color and no other reason. And then look at your tone. Do a tone audit and see whether my tone can be better. I'll just take 30 seconds to say something personal from my side. As you all know, and as Gauri nicely introduced, I have gone from 25 years in audit, in fact, 26 years in audit, in